Dr. Rob, I think I know what I'm going to get Owen for Christmas.
Beer?
No, I'm not going to get him beer. I'm going to get him a bad boy mower.
Do you have one?
I don't have I don't know much about bad boy mowers. I know they sponsor a bowl game, which is the pinstripe game. Nebraska is going to be playing Boston College.
Are they an electric mower?
No, but Owen doesn't want an electric mower. He thinks I'm a pansy for having an electric mower.
You went full electric, didn't you?
Yeah, I have the electric mower. I have the electric snowblower. I have the electric blower. I have the electric chainsaw. I have the electric weed eater.
How well does the electric snowblower work?
I think it works really good. Owen, could I get a thumbs up on that? I mean, it's good for about 6 to 8 inches of snow.
Okay.
Which, let's be honest,
that's
rare.
90% of what you're
That's 90% of what I get. It does my whole driveway, my sidewalks, so I'm fine with it.
See, and I've got a gas-powered Toro. I mean, I think there's like a billion Toros in this town alone. It works pretty solid for... Like, I've used it up to, like, over a foot of snow.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's, like, but I think I'm, like, pushing the capabilities here. It probably is not made for that.
Yeah, mine works pretty good. All I know is that Owen has to use my electric mower for his yard, so he needs a mower. And I'm like, well, if we're going to get him a mower, maybe we get a bad boy mower to support the sponsor of the bowl game.
There you go. I mean,
Oh, you did? Owen said he got one, so he didn't even tell me that he got one.
Never mind. What did you get?
Lizzie's parents moved to a condo.
No.
So he got
the hand-me-down.
Got the hand-me-down. Yeah. He doesn't want he don't want to charge the batteries anymore and come over and get the Ego. I got the Ego.
What kind is it?
A Toro.
There we go. All right.
Toro's a great brand.
Yeah.
Toro's a great brand. I don't know much about the bad boy mowers. They sponsor a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I hadn't heard of them until this bowl game.
Yeah. And so, of course, Nebraska's getting ready to play Boston College. We'll probably talk more about that game next week if we get together next week, which we should. Though I think a lot of people are appreciating the work that Owen does on this podcast, because you and I podcasted last week, and we did it through video stream, and it looked fine and it sounded fine. But people are like, oh, now we know why Owen's part of the production. He was missed last week. He was in a wedding last week. He had to put on the tuxedo and
I bet he looked good.
Party on.
I bet Owen makes that look real.
Well, he cut off all his hair, So
I know I'm still disappointed. I liked the 1970s like Southern rock version of Owen.
Yeah, he was like at a Leonard Skinner or
exactly.
38 Special, exactly. one of those bands. So yeah, so it was. Have you got all your Christmas shopping done?
Not even close.
Well, I tell you what, if you want a Christmas shop, Jeetify is the place to go and Christmas shop right now, because Jeetify is giving you a 50%, not $50 off. We're talking 50% off your order when you go to Jeetify.com and use the promo code DocTalk50. That's DocTalk50. And we had a lot of people on the YouTube channel this week that were talking about they got their orders. I think they're doing like 2-day shipping right now at no extra cost. Experience the VersoShock technology. Your ankles are going to thank you. Your knees are going to thank you. Your hips are going to thank you. So if you want to give the perfect gift, go ahead and give a pair of Jeetify 50% off at Jeetify.com. That's GDEFY.com. Promo code DocTalk50.
I had a patient who ordered a pair with a 50% off deal.
Really?
Yeah.
So they're coming in now going, right before you knock out, Doc, I got the Jeetifies.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. Hey, make sure to take time to like this video. Also, leave a comment if you have comments for what Dr. Rob and I have to say, or do us one better and go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel as this YouTube channel continues to grow. We appreciate everybody who takes the time to subscribe. The big news over the weekend, not really a surprise, but probably the big news. John Butler was promoted to defensive coordinator. Matt Rule's got a relationship with him. It makes a lot of sense. Do you like the move of John Butler being the defensive coordinator?
I'm okay with it.
Okay with it. Okay, now please expand on your pontificate for us.
So I guess I'm saying this, and I'm not sure I have a problem with it per se. I mean, now obviously we haven't seen him coordinate per se. He's got a good resume. I mean, you've got a guy several years in the NFL. I mean, and by all accounts was a fairly well-respected coach. It sounds like he didn't get a promotion to D coordinator at the NFL level, which kind of led to a little bit of maybe a falling out with the Bills, which then made him available for Nebraska to pick him up. But that being said, it's still a guy who my understanding is that he was a reasonably well-respected defensive backs coach at the NFL level. How well is that going to translate to being a college D coordinator? We're going to find out. I think I'm okay with it. I think it's a reasonable hire. The second guessing that I have is that I look at what they did on the offensive side of the ball, and I thought that was in my opinion, a little bit of a swing for the fences with Holgorsen. Now, obviously, he wasn't working at the time that I know of. At least.
Well, he was like consulting at TCU, right?
So he's doing the consulting thing. Nebraska brings him up as a consultant, which, the moment he set foot on campus, he knew he was going to be the O coordinator. It's not like, they're bringing in Dana Holgorsen to be a consultant. It's like, no, Satterfield just got demoted. And so I thought that was kind of a swing for the fences, and it was a good move. I really, really liked it. I saw, first week that he was there, it was at the USC
game was the first time he called plays.
Yeah, and I thought it was okay. It was the next couple of weeks I thought things were way better. Wisconsin obviously was a fun game. Iowa, statistically, they just destroyed Iowa. They just couldn't punch it in when they had to punch it in. Now, some of that falls on the play calling. A lot of it falls on the guys on the field. But at some point, it's kind of like the whole Barry Switzer thing. At some point, the Joes just got to go out there and get the job done. And we have some guys that, there's still some holes on that roster that I think need some strengthening. So I loved the Holgorsen hire. I really, really like it. I thought that was a great hire. And I'm not saying you've got to get a guy who's a big name, well-known name, but I kind of expected them to go after somebody with a few more chops as a D coordinator. Somebody who'd been a D coordinator. It wasn't like I was thinking they were going to go to the NFL and get an NFL guy to come in as the D coordinator, but getting this one guy that you brought in as the D-backs coach. Now, I saw an interesting theory get tossed around on.
Was it on HuskerMax.com?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
was it Corn Nation that had it?
No, I think it was one of the writers for Husker Max. And by the way, thanks to Husker Max who helps distribute this podcast. There was a good. They kind of.
Oh, it was Dan.
Yeah,
it was Husker Dan.
Yeah, it was Husker Dan, I believe.
It's an interesting theory, Dan McGlynn. So, I want to give Dan credit.
And it was, this is an original idea, but it's a good talking point in that this maybe was set into motion with Butler a year ago when they brought him in, knowing that Tony White was eventually going to move on. And nobody thought Tony White would make a lateral move, which he did to go to Florida State.
That's one I still look at, and I'm like, I don't know if that's a true lateral move. I think that's maybe a little bit of a step up.
Okay.
I think there might be more money there that we're not seeing. And the other thing is, from a recruiting standpoint,
that's fair.
It's way easier to get Florida kids to go to a school in Florida than it is to get Florida kids to go to a school in Nebraska.
I would agree with that.
So I still stand by it's like on paper it's a lateral move. In reality, I'm not so sure it's a lateral.
But to make a long story short, basically Butler was brought in last season to eventually fill this spot as defensive coordinator.
And that's what Dan was talking about. And I think it's a reasonable theory on this. So,
do you think there are many changes in scheme? Do you think a lot of things switch up, or is that maybe something that comes during the offseason? Because you probably won't see a major shift for the bowl game.
No, I don't think they would. You've got some time to do it. Now, here's the other thing: how much. When you look at the bowl game, and I've kind of been harping on that. The value of a bowl game comes from the additional time players have to practice, work with each other, work with the coaching staff. It's this additional developmental time. Going to a bowl game pretty much equates to the equivalent of a spring game. And instead of like my whole thing about like, I'm just not interested in going to the spring game because I want to see the opponent wear a different colored helmet. Here you got it. It's, you know, if you are going to put in a different defense, I'm not sure this isn't a bad time to do it. Let's start putting it in right now, start practicing it, and now let's go out and test it out against a team that, well, is wearing a different colored helmet.
Do you think Nebraska needs a change in defense?
Oh, I don't know if they need a change. I've always talked about the fact that I like the idea of a four-man front in the Big Ten, just because you've got so many teams with basically some of these big, strong offenses. When you look at, you know, Michigan minus their quarterback this year, but I mean, you look at a traditional Michigan team, Ohio State, when you look at Iowa, when you look at these teams that have kind of these big, huge offensive lines, good Big Ten running backs, you look at Minnesota over the last several years, the idea of having a true four-man front makes sense to me. Now, if you're going to run a three-man front, if you run it well and you've got a guy that knows how to run a three-man front, and I really thought Tony White did a great job with this. I mean, the only team that really, in my opinion, pushed Nebraska's defense around this year was Indiana. Everybody else we played, that defense I thought was perfectly fine for. Illinois, there was kind of some weak moments in that game, and I think
there were weak moments in every game.
Well, yeah, but I mean, for the most part, I thought Nebraska's defense really played well this year. I mean, they shut down Iowa's off.
That's not hard.
Hold on. They shut down Iowa's run game.
That's true. That's fair.
Okay, how's that? I mean, they stymied Ohio State. USC and UCLA both put up some yardage. But, I mean, I thought Nebraska did a reasonable job of keeping the game close on defense. Nebraska's defense, in the games that Nebraska lost this year, outside of Indiana and maybe a little bit to a degree to Illinois, Nebraska's defense is why we were in those games. It wasn't like Nebraska's offense was keeping us in the games. It was Nebraska's defense. So I thought Tony White did a great job with a three-man front defense. Now, that 3-3-5, I mean, it's such a hybrid defense. I mean, it's one of those, okay, fine, I'll trade a D lineman for a couple of safeties coming up. I mean, that adds a whole, and they're not even really safeties. It's like one's a safety, the other one's this hybrid linebacker. So it's versatile. You can change up a lot of stuff. I understand. And Tony White's not the only guy doing this anymore. There's a lot of three-man front teams out there. And the teams that run it are not running a traditional 3-4. They're all running this 3-3-5 because it's got a lot of versatility to it. So you can adapt it to a run game. You can adapt it to passing teams. It's the versatility is nice to have. So I don't have a problem with it. That being said, traditionally in conferences like the Big Ten, like the SEC, I do like a four-man front just because I think it gives you a little bit better opportunity up front when it comes to stopping the run. 4 big guys is better than 3 big guys.
You know, a lot of activity in the portal going on right now, and we had National Signing Day, then the portal's open. What do you think is more important, the portal or National Signing Day?
Oh boy. God, here's my thing. I think the two of them have become, I understand you're giving me an either or question here, and I don't view it that way. And the reason I don't view it that way is because these kids have so much freedom of movement now.
And I think that's why it seems like
the moment you sign your national letter of intent, guess what? You sign that letter of intent over here. You immediately already have 1 foot in the portal.
you do.
I mean, it's one of those, oh, God, yeah, it doesn't look like I'm going to start in the net this year or next year. Portal, bye-bye.
Well, you could sign now, come in January, and be in the portal after spring football.
Yeah. It's like all you got to do is you just got to wait for the next portal session. I don't know if session's the right word. Portal window.
Opening. Yeah, the window.
Yeah, the window to open up. You just got to wait for that next opening, and you jump in and go. So it's National Signing Day. The signing of kids out of high school now, it's way different than what it was. I mean, I'm looking at some of these kids that signed with Nebraska. I'm looking at some Nebraska kids who signed elsewhere, and some of them were a little bit surprising to me, only in the sense that, I mean, there were some kids that are going to some schools that I thought didn't maybe have as great a season, and so I thought they might change their mind and switch their commitment, but it doesn't matter anymore. You can go someplace and give it I'll just go try this on for size, and if I don't like it, portal. I mean, there's so few restrictions now. I go back and I look at the time I spent in the NFL. God, that was a way more restrictive process. And I remember when free agency came to the NFL, God, what was that, in the late 1980s?
Well, Reggie White started it, right? I mean, that was like the first big one when the Packers were able to sign him. So that would have been early 90s.
Yeah, late 80s, early 90s. And at the time, I remember all NFL fans were like, oh, this is the downfall of the NFL. We follow teams because we love the players on these teams. Now the players, there's no loyalty to a team. It's all about the almighty dollar. And I'm sitting here going like, okay, it's like, well, it is more restrictive in college, really. But then you go to the NFL, and I'm looking at the NFL I played in, which is largely not that different than the NFL today in terms of the way the contracts work, free agency works, et cetera. And now I'm looking at college football, and I'm going, holy cow, like, the NFL is now that more restrictive model.
Yeah, because you're under contract for 3 to 4 years. I mean, you're not a restricted or an unrestricted free agent after every season like a college kid is.
Yeah.
Do you like yesterday, and we're recording this on Sunday afternoon, so the Nebraska volleyball team has not played yet, so we won't get to whether or not Nebraska goes to the Final Four or not, which they could end up playing Creighton in the Final Four, which is crazy. But Marshall had to back out of its bowl game with Army because they don't have enough players. Because they had a coach that left. They have, I think, like 30-some players in the portal. Should the portal window change? And this came up on my radio show. It should be like when your semester ends or define what a season is. But since it opens so early in December, you decimate teams for a bowl game, right?
You do, and I think you would have to have a uniform date for everybody, because I thought about it in the sense that, okay, well, maybe you could put a rule there when a given team's season ends, including that team's postseason games, whether it's playoff or a single bowl game. The problem is you've got one team whose players might be wrapping up end of November, and another team whose season isn't going to end until January. And so you've got this month, you got this five, maybe even almost 6 week window of time from when some team seasons end to when other team seasons end. If you're a guy on one of these teams who's going to go play all the way through into late December, early January, those players are locked in.
And you can opt out of a bowl game regardless.
Well, and that's true. You could opt out. But if the rule was you can't enter the portal until your team season is done, even if you opt out, you're not in the portal yet. And so another team could come in and say, okay, well, we're not going to sign you. We're going to sign this kid whose team wrapped up back in November and available landing spots go away, there's a lack of fairness in that, I guess. So I would probably say you'd have to essentially restrict it until a fairly late date. Like the portal window doesn't open until second week in January.
The problem with that is a lot of schools have started school again. I mean, so it's a timing to where you can move out of your dorm, get everything shipped into the new school and registered.
I don't know if there's a good answer for it. I mean, the power and decision making here, obviously, it's shifted so much towards the players here in this regard that I mean, it's up to their whims as to what they do right now.
Yeah, it's. I know a lot of people don't like the portal. It's a love-hate relationship because you know you can better your team, but the timing of the portal is, and I don't know where you make it perfect.
And now here's my question. Marshall pulls out of the bowl game against Army. Can that bowl game pick up another?
Yeah, they picked up La Tech, I believe it was.
Okay. I mean, I guess, and I think that's kind of a halfway fair system. I mean, if a team has to do that, fine, we'll go get somebody else who wants to play.
But if you're Marshall, you're losing out on a golden opportunity, to get more practice time in.
It's that extra practice time. It's that extra development, which, God, that's the system you have.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just it's not perfect by any means.
Yeah, I don't know if I've got a good answer for it because part of me is, I mean, as a former player, I see that there is value and benefit to the portal. There is a huge amount of value and benefit to NIL, and I don't want to take that back, and I have a hard time. Now, given that the players have some of this value, I have trouble reaching in and pulling some of that back and putting some of these restrictions on. There's things I don't like about it. There really are. And
what are they?
Well, the issue with Marshall, where you can have a given team that enough guys dump into the portal that you don't have the ability to field a bowl game team. I mean, that shafts the other 80 guys on the roster that stayed.
Yeah, it shafts a lot of people.
Yeah, so it's that I don't like that. Now, again, if you ask me, well, what's a good solution? I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I mean, again, you could put some restrictions on, well, you got to wait till the season's done, or the other thing would be you can enter into the portal and still play. That would be the other. I mean, that might be the compromise you have.
But that would be. But I don't know if guys want to do that. You know,
I think some would. Well, here's the other thing.
You could improve your stock.
Yeah, if I'm a coach and I'm looking at a team that I'm looking at a guy and thinking, okay, man, yeah, I would definitely take this kid. Yeah, I want to get one more look at him. So, yeah, go play in that bowl game. That's game tape. You can ask, and you can go ask any NFL scout, coach, GM, personnel director. The mantra in the NFL is the more game tape we have on you, the better. The more film you've got, the better. Go play in that bowl game. Go get more film for the pros to see it. Go get more. And these guys are pros now. Go get more game tape and show a prospective second team, third team, whatever. Hey, here's what I can do to come take a look at me.
Of course, if the Christmas season is right around the corner and Rob's wearing a flippin' shirt. Did you get that at Husker Hounds?
I did not. This is from our friends at 2C Merch.
All right. But if you want to buy some merch.
Which I think should go talk to
Scotty over at Husker Hounds.
Go talk to Scott at Husker Hounds about getting your gear there.
Yeah, because Scotty has about everything you could imagine. And if you want a new jacket, if you want a new hoodie, if you want a new polo shirt, if you want an ornament for your tree, go to Husker Hounds. 2 locations in the Omaha area or online at huskerhounds.com. And when we tell you he has everything, we mean he has everything. Lawn decorations. Hell, you could probably get something for the baby, right? If you've got
they got onesies.
They've got onesies. They've got it all. So go to Husker Hounds for your Christmas shopping needs. 84th and Center is the Superstore, or online at huskerhounds.com. If you need legal representation, make sure to talk to our good buddy Connor Orr over at the Orr Law Group. He does estate planning. He does litigation. His firm is growing, and he can help you out with all your legal needs. Because at some time, whether it's now, next year, or 5 5 years down the road, you're going to need a lawyer. You're all going to need a lawyer for something. So call Connor Orr or email him at connor@orlawgrp.com. That's orlawgrp.com, or visit the website orlawgrp.com to find out more about the Orr Law Group. The 2025 Big Ten schedule was announced. So we know now the dates are going to play. Nebraska has 5 straight home games: Cincinnati, Akron, Houston Christian, Michigan, and Michigan State. This is going to sound like a really weird question. Would you want to play 5 straight home games?
Oh, yeah. Well,
yeah, I've always heard people say they like to get on the road just to have a change of scenery. I mean,
we always enjoy. Okay, so I don't know. Again, the whole here goes Rob talking about the 90s. Okay, well, the dynamic was different in the 90s because, one, we loved playing at home because we did have a home field advantage then. I mean, that was a hell of a home field advantage in that era. Here's the other thing. We enjoyed road trips. Those were fun.
Well, coaches have always said that there's a certain bonding that takes place on the road.
There is. I mean, it's kind of you're on your own. There's kind of this us against them mentality when you're not in your own place. Man, it was fun to go into somebody else's stadium and kick their ass. That's a lot of fun. And that was kind of the mentality we always had was, I mean, there's very few road trips we ever took where we weren't thinking we're going to go in there and we're going to kick their ass. So both are good, but I mean, I would absolutely say home games for a solid team with a good home field advantage, it makes a difference. I don't know if they have that now. I mean, it depends on the game.
That's fair.
It depends on the time of game. Like that UCLA game this year, I was not at the game. It was amazing the number of people that I heard from who told me, it's like, the crowd was dead. They said it's like UCLA kind of killed the first quarter with that big drive, and they just kind of took the crowd out of it. And for the next 3 quarters, it was just kind of a moot point that they were playing at home. So I think the dynamic's a little bit different now, and I think some of it's I mean, I hate pointing a finger at the fans because I still look at Nebraska fans and I go like, oh my God, you've had this mediocre product for the
almost 20 years.
Yeah, the 20 some years since you fired Frank. And you've had spurts of, I mean, you had a year or so under Riley that were okay. You had a couple of okay years under Callahan. I mean, I kind of look back on Pelini's tenure, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, he never won less than 9 games. That's pretty freaking solid. So I look at Pelini, it's like I don't want to denigrate all of the past 20 years because in hindsight, you realize, okay, we were actually doing fairly solid when Bo Pelini was coaching Lincoln. That was a reasonably good time period to have. But, I mean, you've got a product that, on the whole, has not measured up to what the fans have wanted. And you can give me, I mean, fine on the whole sellout thing, the whole how many butts are in seats thing. Here, freaking 70 to 80,000 people are still showing up week in and week out.
For mediocrity.
Yeah. So it's not like, I mean, here's the thing. If Iowa had, I mean.
Oh, they wouldn't be selling out. Okay, I will tell you that right now. I mean.
If Iowa had, like, so let's go, you go from, like, end of Mike Riley through year 1 of Rule. I mean, that's what, 7-8 year time period?
Probably, yeah. Right around there.
So almost a decade of losing seasons.
Oh, there would be 45.
I'm not talking 7 and 5. I'm talking 5 and 7.
There would be
seasons.
45,000 in Kinnick Stadium.
Okay, yeah. So every year go 5 and 7 in Iowa. That
half full stadium.
Okay, Iowa State.
Iowa State fans are a little bit better than they like to support their team, but they're not. I mean, hell, they didn't even sell out the Kansas State game. I would probably say
if
probably
they go
around
5 and 7 every year.
No, you're talking 30,000, 35,000.
Okay. K-State.
K-State probably about the same.
I've been to Florida State. Home games there are amazing. If it's not a night game, I was there for a homecoming game against Wake Forest during a season in which they had a losing season. It's like 50,000 people in a 70,000 seat stadium for homecoming. So it's this unique thing. I mean, fine, there's 10,000 empty seats. I get it. But that means there's 80,000 people showing up to watch mediocrity. So I can't denigrate the fans that if they're going to if the team's having a bad showing, the fans are like, oh, great, here we go again. We're going to lose this one. I kind of have a hard time blaming them when 80,000 of them are still showing up.
Because they hold on to the belief that it's going to happen.
Yeah. So 5 straight home games. I think for this team, that's a good thing. I think you got a better. Here's the thing: are you going to have a better chance of beating Michigan at home or in Lincoln?
At home.
Yeah, or I mean at Ann Arbor. At Ann Arbor. Yeah. So
you called this year's schedule right. I was way off. I thought it was going to be an 8-9 win season. You were right around that 6-7. They ended up with 6. You get 5 home games.
I really did think 7. And there's a coulda, woulda, shoulda. It should have been 7.
So you have Michigan, Michigan State, then at Maryland, at Minnesota, Northwestern, USC, UCLA, at Penn State, then Iowa. Is that, just first glance, is that an 8-9 win season? Because I think.
Hold on, nobody said there'd be math involved.
Sorry.
So Cincinnati, I think that's a win.
So do I.
Akron's a win. Houston Christian's a win. Michigan, that's going to be a hard one because they're going to lose some really good players this year. The win over Ohio State was great, but I mean, you can't tell me that Michigan didn't play above and beyond their capabilities to beat Ohio State this year.
They 100% did.
Okay. That's a wild card in my mind, so I'm not going to count that as a win. So we're going to say they lose that one. Michigan State's not playing good right now. I mean, they beat Iowa, obviously, but
thanks for letting me. Thanks for the reminder.
Nebraska didn't, but I still think Michigan State's they're still in rebuild mode, as Nebraska is to a fair degree.
That's a good question. Is year 3 a rebuild mode? In today's college football landscape, is year 3 a rebuild mode?
It depends on who your coach is. It also depends on how your coaches do it. I mean, Lincoln Riley, this was a little bit of a rebuild year for him at USC.
But he's rebuilding all the time because everybody's leaving in the portal.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That's going to be, I mean, some coaches like Lincoln Riley, it's going to be a boom or bust. I'll be really curious to see how things go for Cignetti at Indiana the next couple of years. I do think he's a good coach, though, and I think he starts trying to work down some longer-term guys, a little bit more of a developmental model over the next couple of years and a little bit less of a portal model. Now, that being said, nobody worked the portal smarter than Cignetti.
I would agree with that.
Because I'm looking again, I was having a couple of conversations.
I think your most talent you find are the people you don't know about at the FCS level or the Sun Belt MAC level.
Exactly.
That's where the talent. I mean, everybody gets excited about this guy coming from Missouri, and I know he was a 5-star, but
I don't like those guys. Well, I'm not saying I don't like them,
but you didn't make a difference at where you played.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the value you're going to find is at a lower level where guys have matured, they developed, and they're like, they're good enough to play at that level.
Well, and I was having a conversation literally today about this with one of our listeners, a guy named Chris. So Chris is a pretty ardent follower of the podcast. And we were talking about a lot, and he's another West Side dad. And so we were talking about a lot of these recruits, because West Side's put, and this for listeners outside of Nebraska, it's Omaha West Side we're talking about. One of the top teams in terms of putting kids into college. They got one of the top linebackers in the nation in Christian Jones go to Nebraska this year.
He won the High School Butkus
I
Award.
didn't even know that
Either did I. I had no clue there was is there a high school Heisman? I don't know.
I'm sitting there going like, shit, I didn't win the high school Allen. How did that happen?
You should have won the high school Campbell Trophy.
There we go.
There you go.
There we go. But we were talking about how you look at some of these kids bouncing around a little bit. I mean, and one of the guys we were discussing was Dan Kalin, so Bellevue West quarterback.
Going to Virginia.
Now it's a Power 5 to Power 5 move. And my question is the dynamic there going to be different enough that he's going to shine? Now, I think part of the problem at Nebraska is that you had a Dylan Raiola in front of you.
And you got another Raiola coming up.
Exactly. I don't know what Virginia has at quarterback. Now, my question is Dan Kalin a Power 5 quarterback?
And you don't think he is?
I thought he developed way more than I thought he would between last spring and what I saw early this fall in some of the scrimmages. I think he's got the capability to play. Now, the question then comes, is he going to get those snaps? Is he actually going to get on the field at Virginia? And so then you start thinking, okay, well, what would be the value then of going down? And you look at, I mean, some of the bigger, better portal moves are these smaller D1 schools, the FCS schools, maybe even some D2 schools, where you see guys who go and just play for 2 or 3 years. And you get, one of my work partners had the phrase the other day, goes, you get better playing football by playing a lot of football. You go to some of these smaller schools, you get on the field early, you play a lot of football, you're probably going to develop a heck of a lot better doing that than you are going and riding pine and getting mental reps at a Power 5 school, but you're sitting on the bench all the time.
Well, let's use North Dakota State as an example. North Dakota State should have probably beaten Colorado in the first game of the year, right?
They're going to the national title.
Yeah, or the semifinals.
Going to the national semi.
Yeah, we're going to play South Dakota State. So you've got them 4-1 after the Michigan State game. Then Nebraska goes to Maryland. Maryland's bad.
God, I was really thinking Loxley had them turned around after last year, and then this year they just kind of crashed. I'm going to call that a win.
So there's 5-1. Then they go to Minnesota.
That's another wild card for me because
I would agree.
It's hard to tell what Minnesota team you're going to find. Because there was a lot of games I thought Minnesota could have won this year that they didn't. And I do think, as much as the guy just bugs the hell out of me, freaking the whole row the boat thing. Anyway, he's a solid coach, though.
I mean, he's won. You can't fight with the numbers when it comes to PJ Fleck, right?
Yeah. So I mean, he's won there. I don't know. Maybe he had a bad plastic surgery off season. I don't know what happened this year, but for the most part, he's been very good for the University of Minnesota. So I don't know what Minnesota. So I'm going to call that a loss.
So they're 5-2.
Northwestern at home, that's a win.
They're 6-2. USC at home. You're thinking about this one.
God, Lincoln Riley can pull in some talent like nobody's business. And I think they shore up a few weaknesses after last year. I think that's a loss.
Really? So they're 6-3. Then they go to UCLA.
I think that's a program that's still in flux. I think they've got some really, really good talent there. But I think Nebraska wins that.
They're 7-3 at Penn State.
Loss.
They're 7-4. Then Iowa. Iowa's going to be bad. Iowa's not going to be good.
You said that this year.
Iowa's not going to be good.
You said that this year.
Iowa will be lucky to have 3 wins coming into that game. Their schedule's brutal. Their schedule is tough.
All right, let's give them a win. Give Nebraska a win.
Iowa has.
So that's 8-4.
That's it. So would 8-4 be?
I'm going to here's the thing.
It's not a playoff. That won't get you in the playoff.
No, whatever I pick, though, I always handicap myself a little bit because guess what? It's still Nebraska. They're going to pop out an Iowa game or an Illinois game. If they can cut that in half, then it's 7, and you're gonna those games you should have won but didn't. Nebraska, the two hardcore ones in my mind were Illinois and Iowa this year. They should have won both of those.
100%. Won't disagree with that. The only game
that would have made Nebraska 8-4 this year. I'm sticking with 8-4.
8-4. So would those games you just described, would that be the Cincinnati and Michigan State game? Would you use Illinois and Iowa as an example? Would that be the Cincinnati and Michigan State game?
I'm going to say the UCLA. I'm going to say the UCLA game and the Michigan State game.
Okay. So
I don't even know who the coach at Michigan State is right now.
He was the guy at Oregon State. Remember he left is this year number 2? I think.
This is the second year.
Former Oregon State coach.
Okay.
I forget his name.
That didn't help me much.
Well, speaking of coaches, Scott Frost was officially named the UCF head coach, and a lot of Nebraska fans are mad that he didn't mention Nebraska by name. He called it his previous stop. Here's the deal: there's no love lost between Nebraska and Scott Frost and Nebraska. Zero. And I don't think Scott ever had this. I don't think he wanted the job to start with.
No, but I mean, you even go back to high school. I mean, he went to Stanford. There wasn't this strong pull to come be at Nebraska when he came out of high school. I think at the time when he was at Stanford, he realized that wasn't exactly a good fit either. And I think he could have stayed at Stanford. I think a great spot for him if he had gone to Stanford and he had a big sit down with Walsh and they were like, okay, you really are a safety more than you are a quarterback. We're going to put you at safety. You're going to shine. And if Scott was comfortable and good with that decision, I think he goes to Stanford and has an amazing career as a safety, goes to the NFL as a safety, which is what he eventually played as in the NFL. And I don't think he ever transfers back to Nebraska. I think wanting to be a quarterback, Nebraska was a better fit than Stanford was, and that's why he came back. It wasn't this feeling compelled or drawn to come home or anything like that. I don't think he really felt any strong tie to come back to Nebraska. In the sense that it was a good fit if he was going to be a quarterback.
He talked about he went to Nebraska the first time from UCF because he felt a tremendous amount of pressure, which there was. I mean, you're coming off an undefeated season at UCF.
In hindsight, it's one of these things. In hindsight, it's like, God, he never should have left there.
Shouldn't have. And I don't think he wanted to.
No, I don't think he did.
And he talked about his dad's health, and there is something, and he was close with his folks. So I mean, that makes a lot of sense when your parents aren't doing well health wise, you want to be somewhat close.
Agreed.
And the truth is, let's be honest, he didn't have what we'd say great leadership above him to hold him accountable. Bill Moose was bad. Matt Davison was probably not a good influence on him. So when you have that fluctuation of nobody holding you accountable, you got the impression during the news conference that the UCF athletic director is going to hold him accountable. And he talked about, hey, I'm going to have somebody to bounce ideas off. I mean, Bill Moose was never in Lincoln. Yeah. He was always up on the ranch. He wasn't an athletic director. He was a drunk.
And that was kind of a weird situation because you had one season, then the next year was the COVID year, and then you had the after COVID year. There was a lot of things that I think, I mean, when you ask why did that not work, there's a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But I think the biggest one is just, I don't think he was a good fit for Nebraska in the first place.
I mean, I don't think they're going to be bringing Scott Frost back anytime soon to do the recognition at halftime like they did Frank Solich. That's not going to happen.
No, I don't think so. I mean, as a player, maybe?
I don't know if he'll come back for like the national championship celebration.
Yeah, I don't know if he would want to come back for it. But that being said, I think fans would be okay with him coming back as the player. I really do.
That may be like on the 50th celebration because it won't be for the 30th.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see.
Because he'll be coaching there at that time. He'll have a good excuse. I'm coaching football at that time.
Yeah, that's true.
Though,
so the other thing about it, though, is, and I've talked about this before, not necessarily in regards to Scott, but other coaching changes we've discussed. There's kind of this really vaguely defined term, and fit. Is it a good fit? I mean, Kirk Ferentz is a great fit at Iowa.
I think Matt Rule's a great fit at Nebraska.
I mean,
I'm not saying it's going to be a success or how Nebraskans want success.
He's a better fit than some other guys. I'm not saying he's a great fit. I'm not sure yet.
The jury's still out on Matt Rule for you, huh?
A little bit. I mean, I think Fickle was a great fit at Cincinnati. I don't think he's a great fit at Wisconsin.
I don't know if Lincoln Riley's a good fit at USC.
I don't think he is. I think he's a good enough coach and recruiter. He's been able to eke it out thus far. I mean, this is kind of one of these things where Rich Rodriguez was a great fit at West Virginia.
And now he's back.
Exactly. Chopping wood at Rutgers. I just blanked.
Oh, Greg Schiano.
Thank you, Schiano. Great fit at Rutgers. Left, discovered, that was a great fit. Maybe I should go. I mean, he had a couple of other.
But how do you not take an NFL job? Because Rutgers at that time was in the Big East, right? I mean, it was just one of those things.
And I get that. I really do. And I understand if you're a coach, you're always thinking upwards and onwards. At the same time, I look at like Nebraska staff. Osborne was a great fit at Nebraska. I think his assistant coaches realized nobody ever left because they realized, wow, this is a good fit for us.
And they didn't. I don't think you had, besides Kevin Steele, you didn't have a guy who had aspirations of really being a head coach. At least I don't think they did.
No, I really don't think. I mean, Turner Gill, I suppose. And he had some good runs at a few different places. Kansas, no. But, I mean, great at Buffalo. Solid at Liberty. I'm thinking of coaches that I thought would have been great. I think Milt Tenopir would have been an amazing head coach. I don't think he wanted to.
Well, because then you got to become the face. You got to become, today, and you're more of a CEO. You're a CEO of a multi-$100 million business. And there's a reason, but you're hiring GMs now. I mean,
and I think Osborne was capable of doing that and did do it in that era. Which is all the more remarkable of how good a coach he was, because he was also the offensive coordinator and play caller and everything else. But, I mean, you go back to the fit with Scott at UCF. That was a good fit for him. And I remember at the time the discussion was, well, is he going to leave there to take the Florida job or the Nebraska job? And I don't think Florida would have been a good fit either.
Do you think, now that UCF's in the Big 12, let's say he wins, right? Let's say he turns it around and he gets courted again. Do you think he stays at UCF? Since you're in the Big 12, you're in a Power 5, and you've lived the experience. Do you just go, you know what? I like Orlando. I'm staying put.
I think Frost, personality-wise, and again, I'm not I was about to say, I'm not beer drinking buddies with the guy, and that's probably like the worst thing you can say about Scott, but I'm not best friends with the guy, but the little bit that I know him, dude, I don't think the guy likes the limelight.
No, I would agree with that.
I think he likes he wants to be the shot caller. He wants to be that guy who's making the decisions. He wants to be the head guy. He doesn't want to be the face of a program, though. He doesn't want
In today's day of college football, you don't have a choice.
He doesn't want that fishbowl. It depends on where you're at.
It's better in Orlando because, Florida State, you're third fiddle at best in the state of Florida.
I mean, it's like you can go to Alabama. Troy has had some really good football teams in the state of Alabama. No one knows who their coach is.
Hell, South Alabama played in a bowl game last night. We're like, oh, I didn't even know, South Alabama. Yeah. You can just have a good football team and just lay low, and you're not Auburn or Alabama.
So I think it's even in the Big 12, and that was the one question that I think a lot of people had. Okay, he was AAC back when he was there previously. Now it's Big 12. How much does that change things? And I don't think that's a huge jump in my mind.
Well, I think where things have changed is you're paying players now. What does your budget look like? How much revenue are you bringing in? So there's a lot of things there that he's going to have to adjust to.
But that's one of those schools that has a massive alumni base. I think they've got more money than people think they might have. And, because I was trading some messages. We talked about this on the podcast already with Connor Orr, and he made the point about a number of these schools from an NIL standpoint that are probably going to be better set up than people are expecting them to be. And it's kind of like the San Diego States, the Boise's, the Central Floridas, the SMUs, some of these schools that kind of quietly, it's the way Connor described it. He said, big money, low overhead places. And UCF's one of those. They're one of those places that they're going to have the money they need to get the players they need to be successful within the Big 12.
The one coaching move that I'm still baffled about is Bill Belichick
going to say North Carolina.
I don't get this. I know it's a big name hire. You got a guy that has 6 Super Bowl titles. He's 72 years old. The most you're going to get out of him is 5 years. Most you're going to get at him. Plus, he has a $10 million buyout for year number 1 with a $1 million buyout out that, which would allow him to go to the NFL. The thinking here is, and North Carolina was really only looking at NFL guys, is that college football is becoming the pro game, and you need to be ahead of it and get pro guys in there to learn how to navigate this. And I don't think the NFL and the college game are going to resemble each other that much. And even with the money, I don't think it's going to resemble each other.
The only thing that is similar is the finances. It's the actual dollars on paper. It's the bottom line. Like, what are you paying these guys? The management and how it's run is so completely different. So I don't think this is a great idea. Now, the other thing is, the difference is in terms of the type of players you're dealing with. Bill Belichick is used to, you're going to have some prima donna guys at the NFL level, which historically were the players Bill Belichick hated. The only guy that he kind of had maybe a little bit of a reputation as a prima donna was maybe Randy Moss. The reality with Randy Moss, though, is that he was this ultra competitive guy. He
was really good.
He was a really, really good football player, incredibly competitive, and kind of had a reputation for being a hard worker. That fit into Belichick's plans perfectly fine. Randy and Tom Brady got along great. They accounted for a lot of wins. But, all of these high school kids coming out now, there's a lot of prima donnas. There's a lot of kids asking for, what can you do for me now? And that does not seem to jive with Belichick's philosophy.
Do you think Bill Belichick's saying, basically, it's the Fred Hoiberg thing, right? I think the draw of Fred Hoiberg was, before NIL took off, was, I worked in the NBA. I have all these NBA contacts. I can get you the NBA. Bill Belichick saying, well, I'm Bill fucking Belichick. I have these relationships. To me, players today, it's all about the money. How much are you going to pay me to play for you right now?
Yeah. And I don't think that's something he's going to want to deal with. Now, some of the background chatter that's coming out of this is that he's not going to have to deal with that. They're going to have GM type positions to do it. I guarantee you the bulk of the actual coaching is going to come from, there's going to be an O coordinator and a D coordinator, and they're going to do 99% of the coaching.
Let me connect the dots for you. So he's good friends with Jed Fish, who's at Washington. Jed Fish's defensive coordinator is Belichick's son, who's going to come to North Carolina. So if this all works out, who's your next head coach at North Carolina?
Belichick's kid.
Yes, but a lot of things have to fall into place because this is a huge experiment.
And they need to actually, this needs to pan out. I mean, it's, how many times have we seen an NFL guy come down to college football?
Pete Carroll, that's it. That's all I can think of.
I mean, Lovie Smith did okay. He had a couple of so mediocre.
Not Pete Carroll's success.
No.
And when you hire Bill Belichick, North Carolina hasn't won an ACC football title since 1980, and they've had good teams in there. Mac Brown was pretty good the first time around.
Yeah, they really have.
To me, if you're not competing for a playoff spot by the end of this 5 years or whatever it is, it's not a success.
Yeah. But yeah, I think Pete Carroll's one of the few guys you've seen who've made that transition.
And the other way around, too, right? I mean, not too many college guys go to the NFL and have success.
No, they don't. You just do not see that happen that often.
You could make the argument, except for Brad Stevens in the NBA, not too many NBA guys do it, from college hoops to the NBA and back down.
College guys circulate in college, NFL guys circulate in the NFL. I think it's going to be an abject failure.
I'm with you, and I think
I could see like 1 year of raking dudes in with NIL and name recognition, and I just don't see it panning out much after that.
And I just do it based on age. He's 72. Now, he's got a hot girlfriend who's really young.
Well,
but
he's probably not going to pilfer some co-ed out of the admin office.
No, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, who's the Arkansas coach?
Well, that was
Louisville and then Arkansas.
Yeah, that's
and back again.
Forget his name. He's the offensive coordinator there now. God, who is that? I should know. I know this. It shows you that we're getting older.
Blows to the head.
Yes,
CTE.
We're getting old. Yeah. So that was. I just don't think it's going to work either. Travis Hunter wins the Heisman Trophy.
Oh, God, my son and I went around and around because my son was like, is it Genty? How do you say his name?
Genty.
Genty. My son was like, there's no way Genty shouldn't win it. And he's like, if you look at Travis Hunter, he goes, I understand he's a two-way guy. He goes, statistically, he's not in the top 5 receivers in the country, and he's not in the top 5 defensive backs in the country.
And that's why he wasn't a Thorpe Award finalist, which Dion went off on.
Yeah, but I'm sitting here going, I think in terms of skill and capability, I think he's top 2. I think he's one of the top 2 corners coming out this year.
Let me just put it this way. The Heisman Trophy is given to the best all-around player in college football.
He's probably the best all-around
Exactly.
player.
I mean, when you look at it.
Genty's a
running back.
Amazing running back. And I think he's an NFL guy. Don't get me wrong. I'll be curious to see between those two. I think both those guys go to the NFL and pan out and become good, solid NFL players.
Cam Scadaboo make it in the NFL. He wasn't there, but he says he's the best running back in college football.
Yeah, I actually think he'll be an NFL guy.
That dude has
I look at what Darren Sproles did in the NFL, and I look at Scadaboo and think, this guy's like a big Darren Sproles.
But can Travis Hunter do in the NFL what he did in college? When I mean play both? No.
It's too damn rigorous. Here's the other thing. Most teams don't want guys to do that. Now, once in a blue moon, you get a slash. You get a Cordell Stewart who's going to do a couple of different things. The quarterback tight end for the Saints, the BYU guy, Taysom Hill.
Okay.
So, I mean, you got a couple of guys like that who can kind of bridge 2 positions, although or Taysom Hill. But he's doing it just on offense. I mean, he's backup quarterback, part-time starting tight end. So, I mean, he's basically like he's for the Saints what Heinrich Harburg is now for Nebraska. He's going to be a tight end now. He's going to move fully to tight end. Guess what? In a pinch, you're going to see him doing some wildcat quarterback on occasion. perfectly fine. I get it. If you're an NFL team, everything is so refined, the margin of error at each position on the field that margin is so narrow. I'm a big margin guy.
Is he a wideout or a corner in the NFL?
I think
you didn't hesitate there.
No, they're going to look at him and go, okay, you're one of our starting defensive backs. Guess what? We need you to be 100% focused on just that one position. The only thing you'll occasionally see guys do is return kicks. And even then, I'm thinking about when I was with the Giants, we had Jason Sehorn, who was a Pro Bowl defensive back. He was a really, really good kick returner. Like, first season that they had him try, we're going to give you a try at returning kicks. Tears his ACL on a return. So it kind of ended that experiment. So teams do not like players playing out of position because, again, that margin is so narrow at that level. The guys you're facing are so good. They're so fundamentally sound. They need you 100% focused on what you're best at. If you're a cornerback, they want you 100% a cornerback. If you're a wide receiver, they want you 100% playing wide receiver.
College football playoffs coming up this next weekend, Friday and Saturday. Make sure to watch Behind the Point Spread with our good buddy Scott Spreitzer. Will be on Wednesday. We'll take a look at the 4 college football playoff games that are coming up this weekend. I think that Indiana-Notre Dame game is pretty intriguing.
There's a couple of those first-round games that I think are going to be really
Ohio State, Tennessee, pretty intriguing.
Yeah. That one was like that one, and then the Indiana Notre Dame. And the reason is because those 4 teams, Ohio State, Tennessee, I think those are 2, in terms of overall talent, super evenly matched. I think Indiana and Notre Dame are very evenly matched teams.
So Behind the Point Spread coming up on Wednesday. That's 8 o'clock. It's live on our YouTube channel. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll know exactly when we go live. Give this video a like. Leave a comment. We'd very much appreciate it. Get your G-Defies for Christmas 50% off by using the promo code DocTalk50 at GDefy, GDEFY.com. So we'll be back on Wednesday. We'll try to get back in the studio one more time before Christmas to talk about, of course, the upcoming bowl game. Probably do another Doc's diagnosis. Are we gonna pick a national title winner? I think we just do that as it goes along. I think we can.
I think we ought to pick who do we think here before anything gets started.
We'll do that. How about we do that on Wednesday night on Behind the Point Spread?
Let's do it.
There you go.
Go Ducks.
For Owen Justice, for Dr. Rob Zatechka, I'm Travis Justice. We will talk to you next week on the Doc Talk Podcast.